everyone. Welcome to The Next Level, a podcast from the Team Performance Institute. Here we provide actionable insights on modern leadership and team development, driving higher levels of organizational performance and life empowerment. I'm your host, John Sanchez. Join me and my team as we take you on the journey to the next level. Well, welcome everybody. I'm honored to be with you today. Super honored to be with a great friend of Team Performance Institute and a great personal friend, Colonel Greg Gadson. Colonel, thanks for joining us today.
Hey, thanks. Great to be here, John. I'm excited to chat with you and just really kind of talk about life.
Yeah, me too. This is going to be awesome. I really enjoy being with you. But just to set the template for today and have everybody understand who we have the opportunity to have with us and share some of the stories and insights, I'd like to go through Colonel Greg Gadson's bio with you. A 25-year officer in the United States Army, Colonel Gadson's life is a portrait of courage in the face of great adversity. In 2007, while returning from a memorial service for two soldiers from his brigade, he lost both his legs and normal use of his right arm to a roadside bomb in Iraq. Despite the catastrophic injuries, Greg remained on active duty and continued to inspire people around the world with his message of courage and perseverance, determination, and teamwork. Refusing to be defined by the proverbial hail of bullets, Greg has drawn upon these lessons of pride, poise, and team learned at West Point as a linebacker, and applied them to his life, career, faith, and his family. After graduation from the U.S. Military Academy, Greg served in every major conflict over the past 2 decades, including Operations Desert Shield and Storm in Kuwait, Operation Enduring Freedom in Afghanistan, and Operation Iraqi Freedom. Greg's military awards are numerous. They include the Distinguished Service Medal, 2 Legion of Merits, 3 Bronze Stars, the Purple Heart, 3 Meritorious Service Medals, and 3 Army Commendation Medals. Greg became one of the first military personnel to use next-generation powered prosthetic knee with technology to make it possible for amputees to walk with confidence. He's a passionate advocate for wounded warriors, veterans, and those with disabilities, and he's even testified before Congress many times on issues related to these groups. Greg continues to be just an energetic and amazing dynamic guy, and his lifestyle just proves that he's serving the nation as an entrepreneur. He's a managing partner of Patriot Strategies. He's a keynote speaker for Team Performance Institute, but also some pretty cool stuff. He's an accomplished photographer, which has been part of his life for a long time. He's an artist, he's an actor, and he remains active in cycling and skiing and scuba. Greg, it is such an honor to be here with you, and thank you again for being a part of this. I'd like to just start off with, let's just talk real briefly about what's life like today with you. Talk a little bit about your family today, where you are. I know that you got a couple grandbabies.
Yep.
After that great intro, let's just let's get us up to speed on what's life for you today.
Yeah. So life, John, again, thanks for the introduction. It's sort of weird, listening to someone talk about your life a little bit. Sometimes it's a little bit uncomfortable, I suppose. But no, look, every day is a blessing. Every day that I get to wake up and try to be the best I can is a good day. I've been my bride and my West Point classmate of this May will be 32 years. We've got two kids that are married and started their families. My son and his wife gave birth to twin grandsons this past fall, and so now I'm a grandparent. As you mentioned, I'm a partner. I have a government service, federal contracting, government services based business, and my partner and I are, just trying to grow our company. So that takes a lot of my time, and and I like to, I like to make time to do some of the things that are important to me, and that's I kind of think of it as my way of kind of giving back, John. Um, there's no more dragons for me to slay, no more mountains for me to climb, and now it's time to kind of, pass the baton on to the next generation, and so kind of with that mindset, it's me, it's just, share my lessons, share my experience, share my perspectives, to the generation that's behind us, so that they can, they can do better. So. And so so because, and that'll, and I guess sort of where I actualize that is, I'm serving on several boards and or advisory committees to a number of organizations that touch service members or veterans, and and as you mentioned, my photography. In fact, I may be working on, doing a photo exhibit at a local art center here in the coming months. So, I've got a lot of things. I got a lot of coals in the fire, and wouldn't have it any other way. Just kind of keeps me going.
Yeah, that is awesome. And again, can't appreciate you passing those great life lessons, those stories across, and taking a look at life like what it is for your day. But can we go back? I'd love to go back to the beginning, like to go back to, can you tell us a little bit about, where you're from, where you were born, what it was like for you on the journey to get into one of the hardest, second hardest college in the world to get into, right?
Yeah.
Next to the Naval Academy, I think West Point's a pretty good school.
You know what, John? You have to remind me to text you the photo, but I was up in Annapolis the other day with a couple of West Pointers. We were just knocking around, and we were walking. We were outside. We actually parked on the Naval Academy because parking out in Annapolis can be a challenge. Yeah. So we used the Naval Academy as our own parking lot, and I took this. I don't remember which road. It's one of the side gates, but I took a picture. I had to go out in the middle of the street, and it's got, the Naval Academy on the side of the brick thing. But then there's a stop sign, and it's a dead end that I've been able to, So I without saying anything, I'm just saying something. So anyway, I got to share that picture with you. So
fair enough. That's perfect. That's perfect.
So my beginning. So I cannot start my story without acknowledging my parents. My parents were born and raised in a small town in the Low Country of South Carolina called Walterboro, in the mid '40s. They grew up in the segregated South and in the Jim Crow South. Did well in school. In fact, my mother was one and my dad was two in their graduating high school class. They would, but upon graduation, they would kind of go separate ways. But eventually, they would get back together in Washington, D.C., at Howard University, where my parents would ultimately graduate. I was born while they were still in college, but I was actually born in Oklahoma City. But the first place that I lived as an infant that I can't remember was Washington, D.C. And my sister was even born here in Washington, D.C. as well. They graduated in 70 or 71 and would begin to pursue opportunities. But we would eventually settle in what would, I never perceived it that way, but there's a Navy town, Norfolk, Virginia, home of the world's largest naval base. Yep. And so I kind of grew up around a lot of Navy folks, quite honestly, and my dad was a pharmacist at a couple of different hospitals in the area. My mother was a teacher. Anyway, the thing I want to share. Sorry about that. I gotta hit the mute button. Is that the lessons that my parents shared with me were I consider the basis of really my determination, my tenacity, and that's having grown up in the South. I mean, and overcoming and believing in yourself. And the thing that I think is really most significant about those kind of lessons is that what they didn't pass on to me was they didn't pass on a blanket hate or a blanket distrust of a portion of our society that didn't necessarily treat them fairly or equally. And my parents, my dad always deal with every person as a open slate or open book, and don't go in there with any prejudgments or biases, but figure out who an individual is based upon your interaction with them, and then deal with them from there. And that's a lesson that I've carried throughout my entire life, and try to live up to that today. As kind of the contrarian of my parents, who did exceptionally well through high school and were very academic kind of focus, I was quite the opposite. Though I wanted to grow up and be a professional football player, and I knew that I needed to do that through college, and my route was to earn a college scholarship. So I invested in my, I saw school as a means to an end, and I know that I needed to be able to get into a school and qualify. So I didn't totally blow off school, but at the same time, my energy and my investment was prepare myself to get on a path to go to have a pro football career. That didn't work out for me the way I thought. I didn't get any big Division I football scholarship offers. In fact, I got none. And ultimately, a recruiter from West Point would come by to recruit another kid that at my high school, and my coach told him about me, and that I hadn't. That I was a good football player, but I hadn't decided where I was going to go. And so I took a visit to West Point. And my only question, quite honestly, was did they play Division I football? And they said, yep. And so that was kind of my path. Now, I did realize that this was not going to lead to a pro football career, and you could probably say I went there with a bit of a chip on my shoulder, because I wanted to prove that I could play football with the big guys, with the best of us, and that was the burning fire that I had going to West Point. So
that is a good place to go. When you have, you need passion, you need fire. For our listeners who don't recognize the difficulty in trying to obtain an appointment from any military academy, the West Point Air Force, the Naval Academy, we always forget about the Coast Guard. That's just not fair to them. But it's difficult. You need a congressional nomination. You need stellar grades.
Yep.
And then recruited athletes, it's a little bit easier for them to get through. But you learn a lot of cool lessons at West Point from the football team. I played sports. I got to play sports at the Naval Academy, and I like to say I was a water polo player. So I said I learned a lot more in the water than I did in the classroom sometimes.
Yep, on the fields of friendly strife are sown the seeds, and for another days will bear the fruits of victory. That was one of the things we had to remember. But that was from MacArthur, and you're right. those you know that that those lessons learned in the pool, you find because you find out about yourself, you're having to dig through. And I mean, we always, there was sort of this stigma at West Point, and I don't know if Naval Academy athletes had to deal with it, but somehow that you had an easier life because you got out a few military duties. And I'm like, if this is such a good deal, then why don't you do it? Anyway, yeah. And so those are, again, some of the challenges that you really find out if you love something and dedicate it to it, and it just hardens you. It hardens your resolve to overcome.
Tell me about some of the lessons that you learned in football that then you carried on into being a second lieutenant in the Army, and then eventually leading into command in combat overseas.
Yeah. So I think one of my biggest lessons as a football player, as an athlete preparing, was really kind of the focus of learning how to stay present and understanding that nothing, you're entitled to nothing. Sport is probably the purest meritocracy that we have. You have to perform or you don't. Or someone that's better than you is going to be out there, and so you just understand that you've got to put the work in, and it's really about your work ethic. I mean, look, I wish that I was 4 inches taller and 40 pounds heavier. Maybe I would have gone onto a pro career. My life would probably be very different if I was blessed with that kind of size, but I wasn't. But at the same time, the greatest gift was probably not having that, because it instilled in me that I had to work harder, that nothing was given to me. And this kind of, scrappy do, undersized outside linebacker. I mean, I played at 195 pounds and right on the line of scrimmage. And that, transformed me. It transformed my mind. And beyond that, I would just say, John, it's about living life and living life in the moment. You can go out there and make a play, and the crowd can roar, and 70,000 people are cheering you on. But guess what? You got to go up and line up and play the next play. And you can't play. If you had a bad play, you got to let that go, and you can't play the play that hasn't come. And so it really taught me to focus my energy into the now. And as a special warfare officer, that's your ability to focus your energy on the task and not worry about what went bad or what didn't go your way, and not getting too far ahead of yourself is critical to being successful.
Yeah, 100%. I think it's that ideal of simplification and being in the moment. A lot of preparation goes into that, a lot of habits. We can get into the neuropsychology around stuff that actually, fuels through you as an Army officer, as a football player, or me as a Navy SEAL. But overall, it's being able to truly, purely focus on the task at hand and just simply do your job. It's simple as that. Do your job. In football, it's to know the play and to execute it, in those 5 to 7, 10 seconds that you need to, purely execute. I love what you said about, that kind of meritocracy, that it's simple. It's simple. You just got to do it and then get back down and do it again. And judgment lies in where the ball lies, right? That's what happened. And we don't necessarily get that every day in our day to day.
Right.
So graduating from the military academy, that's quite an event itself. I'm sure your parents were extremely proud of that moment, being an career academic as well. And, that's an incredible school. Tell us a little bit about graduating, going into the Army, maybe some of your challenges as a second or a first lieutenant as you moved from the football team, which was this great cadre, this great crew, who, by the way, and I have to say this just for Colonel Gadson's, they beat Navy 3 out of 4 times while he was there, so that's a huge accomplishment. It doesn't matter if you lost any games in the season. If you beat Navy at the end, you got a winning season. So
Yeah.
3 winning seasons. What was it like after the academy? So you graduate, military academy, and then give us a little bit about the first part of your junior officer career.
Right. So, John, I didn't think that I was going to make the military career. I knew I was going to be a pro football player, but I wouldn't have. I could envision myself being a coach and wanting to be a coach, and so we have a 5-year service obligation after graduation, and kind of my unofficial motto was 5 and fly. I was going to do my 5 years and then leave the military. But I would end up. I would actually end up falling in love with being a soldier, being a part of a different team, and being and having this mission set, this being part of something that was bigger than you, and so that was the team I was on now, and that filled in the gap of no longer playing football. I was now a soldier, and I love the camaraderie of being a soldier, being a leader, being a follower, and again being part of something that was bigger than me. And as I kind of surveyed the opportunities outside of the military, I didn't get that strong sense. Now, I didn't immediately decide that I was going to, make the military a career. I was just like, okay, well, you know what? I like what I'm doing right now, so I'm just going to continue to do it. And if I don't like it anymore, then that's when I'll transition. And so it probably wasn't until I got to about year 13 when I finally said, well, I'm going to go to at least 20. And actually, I decided I would go to 20, and then I was going to exit and transition to do some other things with my life. And so that eventually became my game plan. Pretty soon, right out of the bat, though, commissioned in '89, in the fall of '90. I was on my first operational deployment to the Gulf as part of Desert Shield, and then ultimately Desert Storm. I went there as a platoon fire direction officer, and eventually became a platoon leader, leading men in the combat operations. My next posting was the 82nd Airborne Division as a paratrooper. We nearly participated in the invasion of Haiti, but Aristide would step down, and so that it didn't end up getting involved in that. I did a couple years at the Human Resources Command here in the DC area, on the Leavenworth for the Command and General Staff College, and then my next operational assignment was the 25th was Hawaii, where I served in the 25th Infantry. The bulk of my time was in the 25th Infantry Division, and deployments to Bosnia Herzegovina as part of stability and operations after what happened when the former Yugoslavia fell apart in the late 90s, and then another operational deployment as part of in Afghanistan, an Operation Enduring Freedom. I would get selected to lieutenant colonel and selected to command a battalion, which is a significant honor and recognition, and so I got to lead the men and women of 2nd Battalion, 32nd Field Artillery as part of the 4th Brigade of the 1st Infantry Division at Fort Riley, Kansas. Um, we were ultimately deployed as part of the surge of '07 to Baghdad. As you mentioned earlier, I was ultimately wounded there in Baghdad in '07. So I would come back. I got redeployed back, obviously, and ultimately, I would after recovering from my injuries, I got approved to stay on active duty, and would continue to serve for another 7+ years after I was wounded, and finally retired in 2014 as the out of the garrison command here at Fort Belvoir. So
amazing. I mean, amazing career for our listeners to really understand. And if you could go back in history, you would say 1989. Guess what's coming down the line? The next 2 decades are going to just be filled with, military conflicts for those who are motivated, inspired to lead, do things for the military. There's a lot of excitement towards, now I get to serve in a different capacity. I get to go down range and I get to do this. But Colonel Gadson, when you talk about every conflict that you've been in, it's almost an incredible amount of, these are history books being written with all, in 1989, because prior to that, it was Vietnam with some special operations conflicts in between.
right.
Very little action in terms of and then you really have, really carried the flag for this country. So a huge amount of gratitude and debt to you. Just a question around, you said it's funny because you said they five and fly. We would say we in the Navy, we said 5 and dive. Like we're gonna do 5 years and we're here. And sometimes when you graduate from an academy, you're pretty beat up. It's a pretty hard process, to get through. A lot of younger folks that I know you inspire, or some of the guys will come to me and say, "Hey, I want to be a Navy student. I want to do this. And they'll come to me and say, I want to be the best, commanding officer of a SEAL team downrange. That's my goal." I think lofty and great. But what I will try to tell them is, all right, let's just start with where you are right now. Be the best. Like if you're going to try out for SEAL teams, we have a program called BUDS. It's our boot camp for the SEAL teams. Just be the best BUDS student you can possibly be. Like, don't worry about don't even worry about getting to a team yet or commanding a platoon or anything. Just be in the moment. Because there's this, if you look at your path, you'd think it was almost linear, right? You graduated from '89 and you went through every single conflict. And if you looked at it on a historical page, you say, yeah, that all makes sense. But in reality, there was a lot behind the scenes. What advice would you give to, people in their careers, younger in their careers as you were, getting out thinking, this is only gonna be 5 years of my life, but then you made it a very successful career. What would you share with young folks trying to sort out their careers?
Right. So, we could say perhaps the folly or just part of being being young is really kind of thinking that we have a lot of control over the things that kind of happen in our life. And again, a lesson that we learn as athletes, it's really, you have very little control over life. And the sooner you kind of understand that and you're able to, I say, focus your energy on, again, being present, on doing your job. I mean, oftentimes, young officers or, sir, they're always talking to me about the next job, next, how do you want to, I want to be like you. Well, no. Just be your best you. That's my advice. Be your best you. Do your job. Be present and be there. Everything else will take care of itself. And it's sort of getting young people to really trust and believe in that. We were all kind of guilty of just kind of looking over the horizon, and instead of driving our car and focusing on what's at hand and being present. I'm not about saying, hey, I want to do this all over again and have regrets. I say that not saying that I'm perfect, because I'm far from it. For me to be where I'm at, for me to get there, I had to kind of learn those lessons. But the sooner we can learn them, the sooner we can learn to focus on being present and being the best that we can. That's what I want to instill in in young leaders. Yeah, it's nice to dream, and you have a moment to dream, but don't not, you got to be present. And if you're in a meeting, you're talking with somebody and you're thinking about what's going on tomorrow, you're thinking about your next meeting, your next engagement, that's when you're guilty of not being present. And you're going to miss something. You're going to miss an opportunity. And again, going back to kind of being an athlete, those of us that you understand, John, as a Navy, especially as a Navy SEAL, as a swimmer, just being able to just focus all your energy into what you're doing. And I say, people that are dragging, some failure, something that happened to them in their life in the past, that's an invisible anchor that encumbers you and prevents you from being your best. Mm-hmm. And then if you're living a day or living a moment or wishing for something that is yet to reveal itself, you're giving away your energy to you cannot be your best. And so I believe that in order to be your best, you have to be able to put all your energy into being present. So be present and you have a chance of being your best.
I love that. That's 100% great. And simple advice, again, that's hard to follow, right? Some of these things are so easy to say, but very hard to follow. And I think it comes with practice, and it comes with also seeing results from that, and being, keeping distractions to a minimum, and just seeing the results that come from that. One more question on leadership before we go on to our next section. And this would probably be more for our senior leaders who are listening, would be, what is it like to command overseas, downrange, in a combat zone? What was it like for you to command men and women in that type of environment? What are some of the lessons that you learned there?
Well, I think always as a leader, one of the things that I believe is important for leaders to do, especially large and complex organizations, is to be able to kind of sort out the priorities. Again, like we are talking about focusing our personal energy so that we can be our best. Well, your organization is the same way. And the old saying, if everything is important, then nothing's important. Mm-hmm. And so I believe that one of the most important things for us as a leader, and I'm not, this is not permission not to do something we're supposed to do, but they always got to know what's important. So I got two choices. We always got 2, 3, multiple choices. What is the most important thing for our organization? What is not negotiable? What can we never fail at? Shoot, move, and communicate. I said we got to be able to shoot, move, and communicate. Be able to take care of one another medically, and if we can all, so left or right, these are the top 4 or 5 things that we cannot negotiate. We cannot give up our standards on, and so given a choice, if you can keep your organization focus on what the priorities are, I believe you just have a chance in being successful. It's doing the little things that contribute to the most important things is what keeps you what keeps your organization focused.
Yeah, I like that too, and I like the idea of having guardrails to the mission. Right, we have another great coach who's a female. She's an executive with us, and she was one of 7 women on a ship of 375 men.
Uh-huh.
A long period, long deployment, and she shared some lessons about being overseas and doing that. And on a ship, she shared this idea around guardrails, and guardrails for the captain of the ship. Like, inevitably he's responsible for the ship all the time. And when he can't be on the bridge, he can't be in, literally, driving the ship every day, and he would have to sleep. And so when he would go to sleep, he'd literally write down, here are the guardrails. Here are the things that you should wake me up.
Yep, absolutely. Yep.
Anything else that's inside this range is all yours.
That's right. He trusted him and he empowered them. That guardrail thing brings to mind some advice I got as a pretty junior major from this colonel, and he said, it was that transition from being a company grade officer to a field grade officer, and he says, your goal as a field grade officer is to work your way out of a job. And I still think that's tremendous advice. And what that sort of meant for me and anybody I was leading or an organization is I don't want them to be dependent on them. And so so that's those guardrails. Now, and can they function? The more that you can power down, the more you can get them to function without your thumb on them or without your hand on their shoulder, the better off they're going to be. And it's sort of it's sort of the difference between running an organization and commanding it. And leaders that can understand the difference between guiding an organization versus, are you holding on to the mask or the helm. I'm sorry. You're holding on to the helm, or you're saying, let's go this way. And so, and that was sort of my philosophical reason is that I was aiming and guiding our organization versus controlling it. I did not want to hold on to it. The other thing, another way of kind of thinking about that is when you hold on to it, then you own it. If you let go of it, they own it. And so, and I got a lot more minds looking at a problem when they own it than if I'm holding on to it and it's just my mind.
I love it. We talk about that in our coaching practice here around, I say it's like the difference between your grip and your touch. As a senior, you don't want to be gripping this so hard. Your touch is going to be way more impactful and influential, and you should just be touching those things that are important throughout the day, making sure they're going in the direction that you want, and just giving guidance.
And the leaders that don't grow are the ones that, as a lieutenant, as an ensign, you're holding on to it, right? And you were successful, and you were highly successful, and you keep repeating that, and you hold on to it, and then you just start to strangle the organization as you continue to go through the ranks. If you're still using the technique, then your bandwidth is narrower, and the organization is bottlenecking.
Right, and it's counterintuitive to leadership, right? You think, because it's your method of success. Like as a junior officer, you're like, okay, if I got this and I just hold on to it really hard, I get promoted and it works. And so you were rewarded for that. And all of a sudden, you move up to major, you move up to light colonel. It's like, you got to let go. Oh no, this goes against everything, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
The beauty of leadership. So let's go through. So I want to shift gears for us for a second, because here's a great career all the way up to, you're overseas now, you're commanding, all the things that you learned from being, from growing up, from your parents, into high school, to wanting to be a professional football player, to going to West Point, lessons on the battlefield, all the way in. And it brings us to a really difficult day, May 7, 2007. When you got really hit by a roadside bomb. Can you take us through the sequence of events of that day as you remember them?
Sure. So as you said, that was a tough day. I mean, in those early months of 2007, quite honestly, there were many difficult days. I mean, it was, you would almost kind of, it was normal and unfortunate that almost every day there was at least one U.S. service member that was, that was paying in full measure. And so that was the environment. It was just an environment of extreme violence, and and so that's really the framework of the environment that we're in. And sadly, I was attending a memorial service for two men in a sister battalion from Fort Riley, Kansas. They were in the STB, the Special Troops Battalion. First Lieutenant Ryan Jones and Specialist Sunson were killed. Were killed by an ID 3 or 4 days prior to the 7th, and we had a memorial service on Fort Operating Base Falcon, to honor these young men's sacrifice. So as I was, I had departed the memorial service, and I was heading back to my headquarters in a 4-vehicle patrol, vehicle 3 out of 4. When my vehicle was hit by a roadside bomb or improvised explosive device. It's a significant IED. The blast lifted my vehicle up off the road and ejected me out of the vehicle, where I can, remember kind of flying through the air and hitting the ground and coming to a rolling stop on my back. I was extremely pissed off. First of all, this wasn't the first time my vehicle had been hit by an IED. The first time it didn't hurt anyone, but I did have to get towed back because it blew out a tire, and I think it put a hole in my oil pan. So it did some damage to my vehicle. So I knew it was an IED. And I was just livid because I'm, in my mind, I'm thinking I'm trying to make life better here. I'm trying to contribute to make a difference, and these people are trying to kill me. And then, but it didn't take me long to realize that I was wounded, and that it was very serious because I couldn't move, as I was laying on my back. And I just remember the last thing I kind of thought to myself was, God, I don't want to die in this country. And then I was out. I was unconscious. My teammates, First Sergeant Frederick Johnson, who was in the vehicle behind mine, he was my acting command sergeant major. He would be the first to arrive at my vehicle when it finally stopped, and he was the one that actually recognized that I was missing. He located me probably 100 meters or so from where my vehicle finally came to a stop. I was already unconscious, lying in a pool of my blood, and he began to resuscitate me. And a young, one of my young soldiers, young privates named Eric Brown, would put the tourniquet on my legs, and he did an amazing job of that. The doctors credit him for saving my life. 19, 20-year-old private who ironically wasn't a school trained medic. I like to share this part because this young man was actually an NBC specialist, nuclear, biological, and chemical specialist in my unit. As fate would have it, the medic that was assigned to my personal security detachment slipped on some ice and broke his ankle, and he couldn't deploy with us immediately. And so we asked the Army for a replacement medic, which they didn't have to give us. So my headquarters first sergeant, look, these are all lessons, powered down, and so these men are thinking of alternate solutions. They would send Private Brown to a 2-week emergency medical course at Kansas State University, and he would literally finish this course just days before we started to deploy to Iraq. Well, they came with me the suggestion of putting Private Brown in one of my subordinate platoons and bringing up a medic for my PSD, and I opined. I said no. I didn't want to disrupt any of the teamwork and preparation that had already been done, just for, this swap. But I think really more personally, what was I saying? If this young man wasn't, if this young man was good enough for my soldiers, then he was good enough for me. So I kept him, just to minimize the change in the teamwork that had been created. And honestly, again, I didn't want to send a message that, my life was more important than yours. So I would keep this young man because I believed in him as well. And so, again, the doctors, long story, but the doctors credit him for saving my life. And just to give you a perspective, again, John, of the environment and my injury. So I went through 129 units of blood that night, probably in some 6 to 8 hour period. I would go through that much blood. I would go into arrest or die 6 times. So I was severely injured. I was in bad shape, and I think more significantly, for sure, is that, again, the environment. In the month of May 2007, 131 U.S. service members paid with their lives. So it was an extremely violent and volatile time period. So I would get evac through Balad and through Germany and arrive at Walter Reed on the 11th of May, intubated on a feeding tube, in an induced coma, but still with my legs, obviously very badly damaged, requiring surgery every other day to clean out my wounds and repair my blood vessels. A week after getting back to Walter Reed here in DC, the blood vessels in my left leg could no longer sustain blood flow, and I started to bleed to death in the ICU. So they had to take me into surgery and amputate my left leg above the knee to save my life. In fact, it was such an emergency that the emergency room nurse had to literally pull off her belt and put a field expedient tourniquet on my leg, just to get me into surgery. And so the next day, the same thing happened to my right leg, but the doctors were one step ahead, and they would actually pull a vein from my left bicep and put in my right leg. And so they were able to save my right leg. I was out of my induced coma at this time and able to kind of communicate with the doctors. And ultimately, I think maybe some of this is, I think part of being an athlete, part of being in the moment, was that I ultimately made the decision for them to amputate my right leg. And on the 24th of May, the doctors amputated my right leg above the knee. I just wanted to move on and get on with my life. My right leg was never going to work as it was intended, so why keep it? So I told them to amputate it. Well, when I came out of surgery from my right leg being amputated, I got some more great news, and I say that with a little tongue in cheek, but they had decided to re-x-ray my right arm before I went into surgery. The results of those x-rays was that my upper arm above my elbow was broken, and as well as the radial head of my elbow was broken, and it would require they'd have to replace the radial head of my elbow and put a plate and screws in my upper bicep to fix my arm. So about a week later, I would have that surgery, and unfortunately, some complications from that surgery. I would ultimately sustain ulnar nerve damage, which still impacts my ability to use all my fingers on my right hand. Radial nerve damage at the time prevented me from picking up my right wrist, and my body, because of the blast injuries, was producing excess calcium, and that excess calcium ultimately caused my right arm to lock up at the elbow. So I was down to one limb, John. my non-dominant left arm and hand was all I could use. I was, before I got wounded, I was 160 pounds. No, I was 210 pounds, and now I was 148. So I really didn't have too much to smile about. Didn't have any outlook on life. And I like to say this was this kind of moment in my life where I just kind of threw up my hands and was thrown in the towel, like I can't take anymore. And I felt like I wanted to quit. I felt like I did quit, and I was trying to quit. And that's where, you talk about being an athlete. You talk about the character of who you are. All those little things that you did throughout your life of just kind of hanging in there, your grit, your hard work, I guess I got to find out, what that investment was. And the long and short of it was I couldn't quit because that wasn't me. I just kind of remember saying, my God, I can't even quit, but, so I said, all right, well, if I can't quit, then I'm just gonna punch. I'm just gonna keep going, and that's where I really realized my ability to stay present and focus on the present. Look, I didn't have a future. What future did I have? There wasn't one I could imagine, and my legs were gone, so there was no holding on to the past. All of it just demanded every single part of my energy to be in the present. And that's, and that was the huge gift that I got.
Just amazing to think about. And a lot of people don't realize what a abrupt change is brought upon such an injury, that you are top of your game, colonel, command, running troops, motivating, doing the best you can, given all the life lessons that you've had, everything that built who you are, your character, your parents pouring into you, all the way through, and just to be riding in a car, and then to have this incident, and then to wake up in a hospital, and then to have an incredible shift of perspective, right? Mm-hmm. And I love what you said, that all that investment that you did prior to this happening is what paid off ultimately in the end. And I think a lot of folks don't realize that working on themselves is an investment, and you had done a lot of that, whether it was subconscious or conscious, where you did that.
Right.
What kept you going? Other than, obviously you're not going to quit. It wasn't in your character. It wasn't in your blood. What were some of the things that kept you going? Talk to us a little bit about what inspired you to keep moving forward.
Well, so let me start first with my faith. I am a Christian, and my Lord and Savior is Jesus Christ, and I honestly didn't know how strong my faith was. I know I identified as a Christian, and we would actually, every day before we left wherever we were departed, we would get in a circle, and we would someone would do a random prayer. And that was our habit. And I've always believed, I've always had belief that God said that through His Word, through our faith, that we would never get more than we could handle. And I just kind of took that on faith. I had to trust in something. I had to grab on to that fact that I can get through this, because He promised me this. He promised me that I could get through this. Now, I don't know what it's going to look like. I don't know what it's going to be, but I'm trusting in this. And one of the things that I can truly recall, my family, my wife, when I'm in the hospital at Walter Reed, she's sharing the book of Job with me, and if you know the story of the book of Job, and the devil putting him through all these challenges, and Job never lost his faith. And so that became just sort of my simple example that I'm just going to keep my faith. I'm just going to keep my faith. I'm going to trust that I'm going to come out the other side, and I don't need to see it. That's walking by faith and not by sight. And so that's the role of my faith. The unconditional love of my family, my wife and my kids, really not wavering in their love. I mean, despite these horrible injuries, I never felt like their love changed for me because of my injuries, and that was incredibly empowering. And then, my friends, my support network, my West Point friends, my Army friends. I mean, I had friends that I hadn't seen or heard from high school that heard about my injuries and were just there, this a massive blanket of support that I say rhetorically or metaphorically that it just kind of softened the blow. It allowed me to kind of process this in a much greater time frame. And then, as I kind of think about this, look, I was still a soldier. I mean, I say this with a little tongue in cheek, but the Army wasn't really my value, and wasn't about my runtime. It wasn't my, that wasn't what defined me. What defined me was here, what my communication, my mind, my heart. And I still felt like I had the heart of a soldier, and I wanted to soldier on. I wasn't done. I felt like I wasn't done. And I was going to make the Army, get rid of me because I wasn't going to volunteer to leave.
Luckily, you continue to go on active duty, and you continue to inspire and do great things in your career. One of my SEAL team buddies gave me one of those nice little plaques you hang in your kitchen when we moved to our new home, and it says faith, family, and friends. And you just articulated all three of those things, like in that order: faith, family, and friends. We hang those up, but this is an example, a true example of somebody in extreme adversity to fall back on that. Yep. For those watching this podcast, if you're watching this through the video, Colonel Gadson's got a really incredible wall behind him, and I just want to go into this wall a little bit with you, sir, because it wasn't your faith that you fell into in May of 2007. That was also a journey. And the journey is very well articulated with this wall, because it's a wall filled with, and I can't even count how many, probably over 100 crosses that you have. Can you tell us a little bit about that wall and how you assembled it?
Yeah. So, well, if you let me digress a little bit into a story. So when I was deployed to Desert Shield, Desert Storm, I got a care package from my mother, and she gave, and they had a couple of crosses that they were really tiny, and I immediately put them on my dog tags, and I returned, and I always kept my deployment dog tags kind of separate. So anytime I went on deployment, I grabbed those, and so. I would have them on all of my deployments, including Iraq. But those SAPI plates that we wear, that body armor that we wear, that stuff is heavy and it presses against your and it ended up breaking my chain, John, that had my cross on it, and I lost my cross. And I tell you, man, I was mortified. I mean, like I felt like I was naked. That I lost the cross that my mom, I'd had it, almost 20 years. And unbeknownst to me, I get another care package from my mother, because I'm not talking to her. She didn't, and in the care package, she sent me a coin that had my name on it. It had a guardian angel. I had a look, and it was my guardian angel coin. So I put this in in something like this, like a neck wallet, because you didn't put your wallet in your back pocket with all that crap we had on. So I carried my wallet around my neck, and I pulled and I put the coin she gave me. I'm gonna pull it out and show it to you. And so I had this coin. If I can get it out. I had this coin around my neck when I was wounded.
Wow.
But the other thing she sent me was this woman's hairpiece that was an angel. Like, again, it was an angel. So she sent me angels. And I'm like, what am I going to do with this thing? And I was going to leave it in my room. I thought about throwing it away. I'm just like, ah. And so I didn't feel good about those options. And so I finally came with the idea, and I had my driver welded in our vehicle. So it was welded in our vehicle. It was between us. So I had angels looking out for me the night I was wounded. I had that coin that my mother gave me around my neck, and we had that angel welded in my vehicle. And so anyway, so that takes me to the crosses, and so I'm on a business trip down in San Antonio, and I'm in a Mexican restaurant, and I'm eating in a Mexican restaurant, and I'm like, and I see these crosses on the wall, and that's when it hit me, John. I'm like, I travel a lot. I'm like, I'm going to do that. I want to do one of the walls in my office like that. And so I just started collecting crosses every city, every town. I make it a goal of mine of trying to collect a cross, and then friends started hearing about it or seeing about it. So it's really kind of, because they've been sharing crosses with me. So I can't. So all those are not ones I've collected, but and so from the Vatican to really across the world, almost, I can't say every country for sure, but there's just a lot of crosses from all over.
Beautiful. It's a beautiful wall, an even more beautiful spiritual journey. And to have, that love and support from your mother, but to keep that forefront, just to think about that. So this is just so powerful. Thank you for sharing that story, of course, with everyone, and just being that level of inspiration. Let's shift gears. Mm-hmm. So it is now 2021. Your injury, roadside, IED, 2007. You've lost your legs. You've come out of that. You went back to active duty, continue to serve, start a company, build Inspire. This is how we met, by the way. We're just both serving in a veteran event. We did an event locally here in Cincinnati to help out other veterans. What's life like for you now? Like, how, this is such a success story. And I know that just like me reading your bio, it's nothing that you ever want read, but share with us a little bit about, what you're doing and how you see life now. And, as we're into this new year, what's life like for you? And what advice are you given? What's top of mind for you right now?
Right. There's a lot of things going on in our worlds. And so, it's sort of that is a challenge. We're in the midst of a pandemic that seems to be tenacious as we try to deal with it as a world and as a country. And so that's certainly top of mind. I mean, I want to be, personally responsible and do what I can to make sure that I'm being safe personally, and I'm being, safe with those around me. And so that's important. Look, we just went through a peaceful transition of government, or you can say a quasi-peaceful, whatever. We're able to kind of transition our government, and those the concerns of justice and equality in our society are also kind of top of mind. I just I appreciate the question, because just being able to kind of, I was an infant here in Washington, D.C. in 1966, when our country was trying to grapple with the very issues that we are still confronted with today. And in some ways, we could say we've made progress, but in some ways, I think we've not made progress, and maybe we've even retreated. Um, and so, but nonetheless, these issues have kind of bubbled to the surface, and I think they've bubbled to the surface because we haven't dealt with them. We've swept them under the rug. We've hidden them in our society, and so and I don't know that we can will truly have the kind of peace and equality that we should live up to as a country, as our Constitution promises, until we do deal with them. And so I'm here in Alexandria, Virginia, and as I said, the inauguration, last week, Washington D.C. could have resembled the Green Zone in Baghdad a week ago, and so what is the state of our country that we are having to deal with those things? So those are certainly some thoughts that I have that are, as you say, top of mind for me. I think about the fact that, my country asked me and asked my men and women to go halfway around the world to get two groups of folks, Sunni and Shia, that to stop fighting, to get along, to help us, for us to be an example of how to work together and get along. And we can't even do it right now. We're not doing that to the best of our abilities right now. And so that irony certainly strikes me for sure.
Yeah.
100%.
Like here's you rose your right hand. You swore to defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and literally gave your life. Gave your life 6 times where you went into arrest, came back, thank God for all of us, gave your legs, gave everything, and here we are. And it's frustrating. And I'm with you 100%. I think it's kind of embarrassing as a country to see where we are. I get the question often, what can we do? Like, from your perspective, how can we serve? How can we continue to serve this nation, as opposed to sitting around and talking about it, complaining about it, trying to be the next loudest voice through whatever social media platform you want to, articulate your point? What is it that we can do? What is it we as a country, as citizens, can do to help better our country right now? What's your perspective on that?
Well, I think it's ultimately about. So first of all, I believe that the solution for us overcoming our challenges is to work together. This isn't about the party in power and one group imposing their will or their power upon the other, because it's leadership, and we just have to understand that we have to come together. The solutions that we come up with together are going to be lasting solutions. The ones that come from one side or the other that are heavy-handed and not built through compromise will not be lasting. And so I think, folks like you and I and our military can serve as examples in our communities of working together and being, coalition consensus builders. This is I don't want to create a solution that doesn't include everyone. Whether I have all the authority or power or not. That's, again, it kind of goes back to, owning the problem. Do you want to own the problem, or do you want to share it and get everyone involved? And I think that's what we got to work on. So, but I'm grateful for the question, because it gives me a chance to share a little bit also of one of the things that a group of my classmates, and we have one Naval Academy grad, Nana, who's part of our team, to develop this diversity program. It's an app. It's a program, but it's an app that's for Android or the Apple products, called Diversity Pop. And it's an anonymous app, so it's something you can do on your own. But it's really kind of it's like first of all, it's a learning teaching tool. But I think at the most basic level, it's meant to form and create self-awareness. You go through the questions and you start learning, and you get to look at yourself in your mirror and see what your own biases are, and understand if you're being fair, if you're going to be honest with yourself, are you being fair? So it's a self-paced, you can drive it as fast or as slow as you want it, but it's at the corporate or at the individual level, we take time next month is Black History Month, and we do a Black History event, and we've checked the block on Black history, and we'll do Asian, and we'll do Hispanic, and we'll do women, but where's the sustainment in between that? Are we just, and so that to me is where this kind of program kind of fits in. Where's the sustainment? Because that's this, when you sustain something, that's when you grow. You don't, right. You're not you don't check the block. You don't grow by doing anything once. You grow by, through sustained program and development. So
sustained practice. I love that. And with, I love this app idea, because I think if we were all asked independently, one-on-one, how do you see the world? Most of us think we're pretty good people. We're, I don't have any bias. I don't have any thoughts around one gender or one race or anything.
Right.
But when really confronted with it, and there's a lot of fun neuro tests you can do online, and now with this app, it really creates an awareness of, and it's not to be condemning of yourself, but it starts internally to say, really, let's challenge like my internal belief of myself. And we have cognitive dissonance, that we believe that I see the world this way. And the older you get, and you and I are in that realm now, Greg, the older we get, the more we realize, oh my goodness, there's so much more out there. Our aperture continues to widen and broaden to realize that, I thought I was seeing it a certain way, and actually there's a whole different light to this problem and issue. But that part of awareness, and I do think that like working together is the key. Unfortunately, the voices have become so loud on the extremes that they can't even hear the other voices anymore on the other side. I think it's that coming together to be able to, if you can't hear the other side, you've gone too far to your side, and you really need to come back and come to the middle. We are, we're a beautiful country. I love this country 100%. I like you, raise my hand too, defend it to the end. And I think we can make our way out of this, but I do think that leadership is going to be crucial and important in the primary difference. As you said, that faith, family, and friends that brought you through. What the last part of what you said was, I'm still a soldier. It was identity. It was identity of who you were that really was grounded firm, and that identity helped pull you through. So we're still servants, right? We're still servants to our country. We're still servants to the Lord. We're still servants to our community, to our families, to our friends. And keeping that mindset helps push and pull us through, hopefully to a greater consensus. I'm a positivist and a futurist by, those are two of my strengths. If you look into my, my profile, those are hard to have right now, being a positive and being a futurist, because you said, like, when you got blown up, you couldn't even imagine a future.
Right.
Right. There was no even, like, you couldn't even imagine what was tomorrow going to be like.
Mm-hmm.
What was the grocery store going to be like?
Yeah.
What was living with my family
Right.
going to be like? But this story, I think your story, so impactful and yet so perfect for the world right now for you to share. And again, I'm just in debt to you for sharing your story, because it was a story of tough and brokenness, but also a story of light and truth, that if you do persevere, if you believe in the identity of who we are, that we can make it through, and we can become better, and we can move forward. I've stolen a lot of your time today, and I'm so honored that you do.
No, it's fun. The time flies by when we're just chatting, man. We get just like, make love in here, but no, it's just really cool, kind of talking and sharing about life.
It's amazing story. Tell us a little bit about your company, so we can plug into that, if you don't mind. Tell us a little bit about the 50 people that you have working alongside you, or any endeavors, or anything that, how we might be able to support you and your efforts right now, Greg.
Well, I'm the managing partner. I started my company, Patriot Strategies, in 2008, kind of as my speaking platform. When I retired from the Army, I kind of decided, as I was retiring, I realized that the most important thing to me was my time and having control of it. So it's sort of, I kind of backed into kind of understanding that, I just, if I'm an entrepreneur or businessman, then I'm going to have control of myself or my time. And so that that was what kind of drove me to take on my partner, another West Point alum and Army football player, Kurt Gutierrez, and so we are a service-based government contractor, and so we have done. Like I said, we're a jack of all trades, master at a few, but we have done support to wounded warriors. We're involved in cyber training and cyber information assurance. We're supporting one of our contractors, Optum, that's executing the VA's community care network. So we're working for veterans that are supporting the VA. So doing some minor construction and restoration at some of the buildings in the local area, some of the federal buildings, like i.e. the FBI building. So we got a number of different projects, even doing some work on Andrews Air Force Base. So we like to be flexible and agile to work with different partners that we can be value added and be good teammates. I also like to kind of mention again some of the activities and boards. I'm a board member for the Gary Sinise Foundation. So any listeners want to support organizations that do great things for veterans, the Gary Sinise Foundation or Vail Veterans Program, the Simplify Fund, CODA Support or Hope for the Warriors, the Army Emergency Relief, are just a handful of the organizations that I'm able to touch and work with, and so they can always use your time, your talents, or your resources to make a difference in our community. So that keeps me with a pretty full plate.
Yeah, I'd say there's no slowing you down, Colonel Gadson. I absolutely love it. And for those of us who are mortal, we think, geez, how can you do everything that you do? But it goes back to our question of like, what can we do now? And there are boards that you can join, or organizations that you can be a part of, whether it's time, treasure, talent. We all can give in a certain way. And
Right.
I think, Greg, and this is something I found, unfortunately, later in life, is like when you turn that light on, the world becomes so much brighter, and the world just becomes so much. You get to meet and be around people that are just different in the way that they see life, and it enriches your life as well.
Yep.
I've really enjoyed this whole conversation as we were talking. For those, before we started, Greg said, "Should I shut my blinds in the back? Is there light coming in?" And as we talked, and as we went through
the sun is moving, right?
it was almost as if the light was shining on you, and it was like I'm like internally smiling and laughing because so much truth has been shared here, and so much of your story is inspiring. I wouldn't, and thank you for sharing some of the ways that we can support you. Greg is a speaker, a very, very, very. I've seen him in person, and he's part of the Team Performance Institute, one of our speakers as well. So if you ever want to get a hold of an incredible speaker, just give us a shout. We'd be happy to link you with Greg Gadson. I finish every podcast off with a question around leadership, and the question is pretty simple: is if you could go back in your life, if you could go back to a stage of your life, I'll put you back as after you threw your Army hat in the air. We call them covers in the military. And you could go to that guy and give him a little bit of advice, knowing where you are now, knowing where you're sitting right now. What advice would you give your younger self, knowing everything you do now?
Be present, be my best, and be at peace. Just keep it simple.
I love that. That's absolutely beautiful and brilliant. Great, simple concepts, as we know. And then along your beautiful journey, an arduous journey, very difficult concepts to hold and to keep, right? If we could all do those three things every day, can you imagine the country that we would be? Can you imagine the world we would be? Be present, be my best, and be at peace.
Yep.
Well, Colonel Gadson, I can't thank you enough for being with us today and for sharing your story. We will get this out to all of our listeners, and very much looking forward to having you be an even deeper part of our world and lives. Thank you so much.
Now, thank you, John. It's always a great time. It's fun.
Honored to be here.
Super.
All right. Thanks for being a part of the next level, and I will talk to you hopefully very soon.
All right. Hey, we had another good one.
We did, and I